Hello and welcome to the latest Awin webinar, in which we'll be tackling the annual topic of peak trading, the golden quarter, and what lies ahead for all of us, be it in the affiliate channel or more broadly across digital. What can we expect to see this year? Well, this year, of course, everything will happen against the backdrop of three additional factors that will undoubtedly prove disruptive, and hopefully we'll tackle all of those in the course of our discussion. So COVID, obviously, the deepening global recession, and Amazon Prime Day occurring in October for the very first time. Before we begin, I want to thank our panelists of experts who are joining us today and who bring with them great experience and different perspectives spanning a range of companies and regions. So today we've got joining us Tricia from the Performance Marketing Association, Bill from eMarketer, and Tomas from SimilarWeb. The Q&A is now open, so feel free to submit questions at any time, and we'll try and tackle some of those as we go along today. If you want a specific panel member to answer, please be sure to mention them by name in your question. Before we chat to our guests today, though, I wanted to briefly frame the conversation. So I'm conscious that there's always a wealth of information, data and presentations out there, but as a global network, I just wanted to show you how Black Friday and the wider trading period is positioned for us as an affiliate network before I hand over to Tomas from SimilarWeb, who will present some peak trading insights from their business. So in an ocean of unknowns, what do we actually know? So I guess it's useful to take a look at 2019's numbers. So when Awin's data is tracked globally across the year, you can see from this graph here how important November is, tracking sales at roughly 1.5 times the rate of the daily average across the year. This then further spikes in the last third of the month of November, obviously, as we approach Cyber Weekend. But when we delve into the data, we can see just how Cyber Monday continues to shrink in importance. So while the US still tracks marginally more sales on Cyber Monday rather than on Black Friday, that's potentially where the legacy of Black Friday as a kind of in-store cultural event and Cyber Monday as more of an online event still persists. You can see that it's the only market that Awin's active in where Black Friday doesn't easily outstrip Monday. But the undoubted story of the past few years is just how cutthroat retailer competition is pulling the promotional window of Cyber Weekend earlier and earlier. Trade body, the IMRG, coined the phrase Black Vember in 2018 to reflect how some retailers now start discounting as early as the beginning of the month and scooping up Singles Day on the 11th of November along the way. Awin's data tracked over the years has seen some of the biggest year-on-year hikes outside of Cyber Weekend. And here you can see from 2019's numbers that Singles Day experienced an almost fourfold percentage increase over Cyber Monday, and that there was a similar increase on the Wednesday before Cyber Monday as well. So what insights should we look out for in 2020? Well, there's every indication that that window will be pushed earlier this year. This year has obviously been one of huge disruption for all of us, but retailers now have Amazon's Prime Day, which is usually a July fixture, falling in mid-October, in fact, next week. So with that in mind, what trends should we consider? Well, as well as Amazon potentially diluting the impact of promotions later in the year, we need to consider whether consumers are going to spend or save, all of which takes place against the backdrop of a global recession, the full impact and effects of which are being masked by various government finance initiatives. Another e-commerce phenomenon of 2020 has been the surge in new customers. So at peak lockdown in April, Awin experienced a 38% increase in new customer numbers tracked for those retailers who were capturing the information on their affiliate programs. So turning these new and also first-time shoppers into loyal customers is a huge challenge for brands. Additionally, as the winter nights draw in, so will the disincentive to hit the stores, especially in more crowded situations. Also, as seasonal flu compounds COVID infections, so online shopping surges in attractiveness. And then there's the question of what people will buy. If they choose to cut down on family and friendship interaction, will that mean that they won't buy their usual gifts, or will their attention turn to alternative presents? And that could see the complexion of people's presents change. So there are a few things that we've kind of identified that we need to monitor over the coming weeks and months. I'm sure that they're questions that many people listening today will have also considered. But before we open up the discussion, I'm going to hand over to Tomas now from SimilarWeb, who's going to talk us through some of the insights that they have around Black Friday.
Thank you, Kevin. These are great insights already. So let me start with general traffic. If you can go to the next slide. So what I like to start with is really looking at overall traffic to the all shopping sites, because it tells you the biggest story. So this is not only search traffic or anything, this is all traffic going to top 100 shopping sites in the US. So what we can see here is that Black Friday and the overall shopping season was getting bigger in 2018, significantly bigger than in 2017. And in 2019, it kind of stagnated a bit. The other important point is that the Prime Day in July became more than just a holiday for Amazon. What we've seen in a lot of our data, first of all, there was a 6.1% growth in overall traffic to the whole shopping category during that time. And we've seen that more and more retailers take part in that holiday, promoting a lot of sales during that time and using that day when people already are in bargain mind to actually jump on the bandwagon of trying to get a bigger percentage of the actual share of the money. So this is a very interesting point, because now they'll have to make this decision again. When the Prime Day is moved closer to November, it's not as easy decision, because before that they were doing it in July. It's a slow shopping season. So it was an easy decision to make that we should promote some of the deals in July. We should make specific promotions, but now they might be diluting the sales in November. So what I think we're going to see is some more aggressive retailers doing a lot of promotion in October and trying to jump on that train early, and some of them playing more cautiously and actually doing it in November. But this is the big part of it, is that this is becoming a huge part in the shopping category. So if we can go to the next slide, we can see a similar trade, a similar perspective from the monthly, similar data from the monthly perspective, but now shown in weekly numbers. So you can see the first week of shopping season, we've seen a huge increase in traffic to the shopping category in 2018, which was 12% growth over 2017. And then we've seen a stagnation in 2019. And on the other hand, we've seen a 8% growth in the traffic to overall category in that week of Prime holiday. So if we can go to the next slide, what I'd like to look at as well is the search traffic, which in many cases, it just shows perspective of the shoppers and their user behavior on the web. And what we did here, we basically used the top performing keywords for Black Friday, and we looked at US and UK traffic. And we can see a difference in how people use the web. And we can see that in the US, the top performing sites actually potential affiliates and the websites that combine different deals together. And then we can see in UK that retailers are the top gatherers of the traffic. So it's a difference between how US people and UK use the search and what they look for when they look for deals. And one of the reasons for this is that during Black Friday, I think in US is the complexity of the deals and is the vast majority of how many retailers are participating in. And they trust more the already solved questions for the which best deals are, where they are, and they're trying to find the answers really quick instead of UK trusting the potential biggest retailers and just going to Black Friday. So if we can move to the next slide, I think one of the most important questions to ask as a marketer is not just what the trend is and if it's going to go, but what you can do about it. And what we do really well in SimilarWeb is that we're trying to track every single marketing channel and their performance. And now we actually can look at conversion rate and conversions driven to the retail sites and shopping sites. And we can break down them by the different marketing channels. So from here, you can see conversions, average conversions for top shopping sites in the US. And they changed between October and November. So from here, we can see that referrals and display ads grow them in conversions during that time. So they become more important and they potentially become the biggest drivers of the increase. So retailers use those channels more to drive more conversions over time. And that's the one that you have the most potential getting to. And on the side in US, you can also see that referrals are, or affiliate networks really, are the highest quality channels. It's not only that they drive a lot of conversions, they also are the most converting channel overall. So what I want to do to the next part, if you can go to the next slide, I want to see, is there a difference between US and UK? And you can see that in UK, referrals are by far the best channel to actually have highest conversion rate. So even compared to direct, it's 55% higher than direct conversion rate, which is usually one of the best rates in any marketing channel. So this shows the importance of focusing on affiliate networks that people trust a lot during Black Friday and they're doing their research. And it's not only the phenomenon in US, but it's even a bigger phenomenon in UK. So this is a quantitative data that proves the point that if you are going out and trying to get four affiliate partnerships that you can use, and this brings me, and this can potentially bring us a lot more revenue, a lot more sales, because it's performing the best across all shopping industry, and everyone is using more of referrals during that time. So if we can go to the next slide. I wanted to look at the best performing websites during that time. So what we looked at is 20 top retail sites in the US. And we looked at who grew the most in terms of traffic during November. And we found out that Kohl's and Bed & Bath & Beyond, Costco, Walmart, and Target were the best performing ones. They grew the traffic more than 100%, every single one of them. So then what we've done is, if we can go to the next slide, is to look at how did they use these channels as display advertisement and referrals. So, and here you can see that the timeline of weeks when traffic from display and referrals were used. So the top one is display traffic, and the bottom one is referral traffic. So referrals are usually affiliate partners. So, and you can see that in general, display traffic is used more evenly, is distributed more evenly during the month, while referrals are peaking during the last week of November, as it is more of a conversion channel, more of the last week attribution performance channel really for shoppers. While display advertisement is used more for promoting the future deals and increasing awareness. And that is all from me. I hope this was clear and useful, and please ask more questions.
Thanks, Tomas. So as I mentioned earlier, we've got a great panel of experts joining us today. So from it's kind of predominantly, I guess, a UK-US focus today. First up, I want to introduce Tricia. She's the Executive Director of the Performance Marketing Association. The PMA is a non-profit trade association that seeks to promote the growth of the performance marketing industry, help model best practices, and advocate on behalf of businesses. We also have Bill joining us, who's the Senior Analyst at eMarketer at Insider Intelligence. For nearly 25 years, eMarketer has been trusted as one of the most comprehensive sources of information on how to operate in a digital world. And obviously, you've just heard from Tomas, who's a solution consultant at SimilarWeb. And SimilarWeb is the data and insights firm which gives its partners the global multi-device market intelligence they need to understand, track, and grow their digital market share. As a reminder, I can already see that one question's come through. The Q&A is now open, so feel free to submit those questions at any time. And again, if you want to direct them at a specific panel member, remember to include their name in the question. So without further ado, we've got about 40 minutes of discussion, hopefully really useful discussion for everybody listening. I wanted to kick off. We just heard some insights there from Tomas, and actually today we're fortunate enough to get hopefully some kind of exclusive data coming through from Bill, because I know, Bill, that you've just been kind of putting your finishing touches to some of your UK predictions for November and December. Is there anything you can share with us today on that?
Yeah, so we forecast the retail holiday season sales in the UK. As you mentioned, that covers November and December only, and you've really got to bear that in mind when I give you the findings that we're looking to publish in the next few weeks. So yeah, these are exclusive numbers. We expect retail holiday season sales to overall decline this year in the UK by 10.2%. That includes physical and digital retailing. Retail e-commerce sales during the same period will be up by 16.7%. So, you know, there are obvious reasons why those numbers are the way they are. It's interesting when you compare it to our US forecasts, though, because we're actually predicting a slight increase in the US, very small, but a slight increase. And I know we'll come into this into some detail later on in the discussion, but there are a few reasons as to why the UK is a little bit different than the US. The recession that we are officially in the UK is an important factor in our numbers, sort of dragging a little bit in the UK. When we talk about Black Friday, Cyber Monday, and Prime Day, as I mentioned, our numbers don't include October. If they were to be counted or folded into our holiday season numbers, we would be looking at something slightly more positive. I think it's also worth mentioning as well that when we talk about Black Friday outside of the US, we're talking about a far less of a physical shopping holiday, and I think that's a really important consideration. So we've seen a lot of behaviour shift online this year around the world, but in the UK as well. But because Black Friday has been more weighted towards digital, it's still a physical shopping holiday, but you know, digital is more has more of an influence. The impact that COVID has had on, or will have on, Black Friday shopping in the UK, it won't be felt as keenly. So whereas in the US we may see more retail sales moving onto digital channels, in the UK we're already well along that line. So yeah, interesting things going on in the UK, maybe slightly different than we're seeing in the US for sure.
I mean, I know there are a couple of other stats that you shared with me this week that I want to come back to shortly, but Tricia, if I can just bring you in here. I mean, Bill makes an interesting point there around how because Black Friday doesn't have the cultural resonance outside of America, really, that for us it was kind of certainly from an affiliate perspective, an online first experience. Do you think that this year could be the tipping point? There's always this discussion about at what point Black Friday is going to tip the balance and actually be the bigger day compared to Cyber Monday. Do you get a sense that could happen this year?
I think it can definitely happen this year, because Black Friday in the past, you know, as has been mentioned a couple of times in the US, it is that kind of like family shopping. Everybody spends Thanksgiving together, and then, you know, mom and grandma get up and go on Black Friday and wait in line at Best Buy or Walmart or wherever at 4 o'clock in the morning. And it's kind of an extension of the whole cultural family experience of Thanksgiving weekend. People travel to be with family, they spend Thanksgiving Day eating, they spend Black Friday shopping, and then we would start to see those Cyber Monday sales online, because that's the day everyone goes back to work and everybody sits in front of a computer. And so when you're sitting in front of the computer, that's when you're shopping online. But now we're going to have a lot more people on the computers on Friday, because we're not going to see people traveling. We're not going to see mom and grandma and generations of people spending, that 3 and 4 day weekend together like we have in the past. So you're actually going to have more people using technology over that Thanksgiving weekend just to be able to, to have the Zoom meetings or Zoom, meetings with family, to be able to spend kind of that cyber time together. So it's kind of the perfect storm of, we're not going to have people in the stores because it's a little unsafe to be in the stores, but we're also going to be having more people online because that's where they're going to be meeting up with their families. And so I think we are going to see a big shift from the people that didn't shop online until Cyber Monday, because that's when they got on the computer. Now they're already on the computer Friday, so why not take advantage of the deals that day?
Yeah. One thing that I think that I'm really intrigued to know is going to happen this year, to see whether it's going to happen, is almost like a second bounce of e-commerce growth. So we obviously witnessed a kind of huge surge in e-commerce around kind of very strong lockdowns in the spring. And then I know that there was a kind of a lot of work done looking initially at the countries that came out of lockdown first, to see that actually e-commerce had sort of gone back to not that far off pre-lockdown levels. And certainly we haven't, we're still experiencing as a network 10% plus year-on-year monthly growth. But Bill, I know that one of the stats that you referenced earlier was sort of like a 17% e-commerce growth, which would indicate that there's potentially going to be a bit of a bounce back. Is that kind of what you're anticipating?
Yeah, that it's interesting when you put that 17% bounce back, if we can call it that, in relation with the rest of the year. So our full year retail e-commerce sales, online sales growth is going to be higher than that. It's going to be more like 30%. Because of that incredibly strong growth we had earlier in the year, because we had to shop online, right? In the UK, well, things are constantly changing on an almost daily basis, but we can still go into physical stores. But there is still that a jumpiness, a concern amongst consumers about what's going to happen. So we have the furlough scheme coming to an end in the UK at the end of the month. That there's something else that's coming after that, but it's a watered down version. Consumers have been able to maybe save a little bit of money back, but what's going to happen next month when that stream of income will come to an end? And there were some figures out recently looking at autumn redundancy numbers in the UK possibly reaching 700,000 on top of the 250,000 that the government had reported up to June. You can understand why consumers are reticent to spend perhaps more, which is why we have that slight decline in overall retail sales, even though we're still seeing the growth in retail e-commerce. It could be stronger, I guess, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, I mean, it obviously, spring was such a huge growth in e-commerce. I think that when we looked at DIY, for example, and homeware, I think by the end of June we had tracked as much revenue as we had in the whole of 2019. So obviously it's very sectoral as well. So that's going to be really interesting. I mean, Tricia, from your perspective, I know that there's obviously a lot of discussion, political discussion at the moment around whether kind of this additional stimulus package is going to be signed. How much do you think that we obviously have no idea what's going to happen with that, but how much do you think that will play into how positive or people's approach to shopping over the next couple of months?
We know that there was a little bit of bump in spending after that first round of stimulus checks. So, it wasn't a far lasting effect to keep everything back on track. But we do know that most of the big retailers said that they did see a little bit of a bump in that. But we also, with that stimulus check, just saw a lot of people paying off debt. So, you know, the stimulus checks to some effect we've seen some increases, but we're also seeing a lot of people that are just paying off debt. And still, it's quite possible we'll see a little bit, you know, they're saying it's probably not going to be until after the election that the stimulus gets passed. So you're looking then at, you know, early to mid-November, and we're talking about, you know, online shopping season already starting in October. So, you know, it's something that the online shopping season is going to really launch before we get to that stimulus check, most likely. And then at that point, you know, it might help a little bit with the Black Friday.
Okay, I mean, before we come on to talk about sort of more sort of November and December, does anybody kind of have anything that they are kind of any sort of particular insight or thoughts or feelings or attitude towards the fact that Prime Day is in October? Obviously, we know it's going to be disruptive. It's a huge unknown. Does anybody kind of have any kind of strong idea of what impact that is going to have?
We do have some forecasts on that. I think we published them last month, and we have US and global figures. So we're predicting Amazon Prime Day retail e-commerce sales of nearly 10 billion US dollars this year. That's up from under 7 million last year. In the US, that figures for 2020 will be 6.2 billion, and then in the rest of the world, 3.75 billion. So we are predicting incredibly strong growth for Amazon Prime Day, and that's on the premise that there's this pent-up demand. People have been waiting since July to get these discounts, and the timing now, just prior to Christmas, with consumers having these concerns about what's going to happen, you know, what's over the precipice in November, it all points to a strong Prime Day, we think.
And obviously there's only a 6-week, near enough, I guess, a 6-week window between Prime and Black Friday. Kind of, I suppose this is sort of a bit of a limbo phase in that we don't necessarily, you know, retailers can't necessarily plan in the same way as they have done in previous years. What is going to happen? Tricia, are you hearing anything kind of anecdotally from brands and businesses that you're speaking to? Is anybody kind of deciding to kind of bite the bullet and go sort of full on as soon as possible? We obviously know that those promotions are getting earlier and earlier in the year, which is obviously dragging peak earlier in the year away from December.
Absolutely. I mean, we've seen, you know, survey after survey every year that consumers are starting to do their holiday shopping earlier, and that they're saying, you know, that they do start in October. And there are even more reasons this year to start the holiday shopping in October. I mean, scarcity. We've seen so much scarcity in so many products since the beginning of the pandemic. And so I think people are now thinking, if you see a great deal on something, you need to grab it so that you can make sure that you get it, because those same things could be sold out. Everything seems to be scarce these days, from, you know, toilet paper to elastic. So when you're talking about things like the hot toys, electronics, things like that tend to sell out anyway and see some scarcity, if people see good deals on those in October, they're going to go ahead and start grabbing them for the holidays. There's also in the US a lot of shipping issues. You know, we have issues with the Postal Service, with UPS, with FedEx. And so, you know, retailers don't want to end up having a lot of disappointed customers because they can't get things through their warehouses fast enough because of all the shipping delays, the people shopping too late. So a lot of retailers are saying that they are going to encourage people to start that holiday shopping earlier, just to make sure that they have time from a fulfillment standpoint in their warehouses to be able to get everything out, and to make sure that there aren't a lot of disappointed people just because we're going to see, you know, so much backup and shipping delays the closer that we get to Christmas.
Yeah. And Thomas, if I can bring you in, looking at it from a kind of a traffic website perspective, have you seen kind of any particular trends around where certain sites sort of spike, and whether that is, or that's obviously in line with peak events being pulled earlier? Is there anything kind of you can share around that?
Yeah, of course. Like we can definitely see that Prime Day is becoming huge. Like, and as I said before, is not only a Amazon event anymore. The interesting thing that we've seen is that Amazon is promoting more and more of its own merchandise and its own basic brands. And when we analyzed it last year, we've seen that the most of the shopping happened with Amazon stuff that they produce. So even if the retailers that come in, there's still a lot of potential to sell other stuff. So even though Prime became this big thing and it might take up some of the demand, a lot of consumers will not be satisfied with everything that Amazon is promoting. So I think that is a very important thing to keep in mind.
Yeah. So if we turn to kind of a couple of other kind of, I suppose, smaller topics that kind of within the umbrella of Black Friday, one of the things that I'm really intrigued to know, and I don't know if anyone has any particular insights around this, is we know that a lot of people shopped online for the very first time this year. There's a lot of product discovery as well, which partly I think may have borne out in the fact that from some of Tomas's data that maybe conversion rates aren't necessarily as strong for people going to retailers direct as they have been. I mean, that obviously presents a challenge for brands, an interesting challenge, an opportunity. But kind of, does anyone have any sort of thoughts or feelings or any particular insights around how to react to that phenomenon?
Well, from my side, we've seen a lot of brands taking advantage of this and looking into it as an opportunity. Like in many industries, during COVID, we've done analysis in many industries, and when there is change, there is an opportunity. So because some brands and some retailers are too slow to react, or they start later, they don't have budget, like some of them decide to reduce paid search budget because there's enough demand during that increase. And we've seen smaller players actually increase their paid budget, and that becomes an opportunity. Like, Amazon stopped their paid search and a lot of advertising budget in March, I think. So we've seen a lot of retailers, especially small retailers, increasing theirs and getting their market share so much bigger during that time. So during this time, I think the most important thing to understand that in many cases, it's not really, you shouldn't look at it as a challenge. You should look at it as an opportunity. And if you play it right, this is the best chance for you to increase your market share, to win over a lot of new customers that are there, that in many cases are not won over by your competition.
Yeah, I mean, it's also potentially for some brands changes the kind of demographic of who they're targeting. Certainly if certain products have been discovered, I think that there's obviously multi-layered, but we're seeing a number of kind of, this has been a great opportunity for SMEs or niche brands as well. Tricia, have you kind of been, are there any kind of particular niches or brands that you've been speaking to that have kind of all of a sudden kind of discovered affiliate marketing or discovered digital, or kind of you've been having any kind of interesting conversations with any in your capacity in the PMA?
I would say what we're seeing in some cases is the lipstick effect, which is, where in times of trouble, it was coined because, women might not be able to afford the fur coat, but instead they're buying the expensive lipstick. So you can't have the really fancy, expensive items because of the economic insecurities, but you're still buying something that you treat yourself with. And so, of course, lipstick has not been the thing this time because you can't see it when you have a mask and you don't really need it that much on a Zoom. But other things have taken the place using the same psychological concept. And so we're seeing that in, self-care items, health items, aromatherapy, all the different ways that you take care of yourself, home manicures, home gyms, things like that. So it's still that same lipstick effect where people aren't spending as much money on the really high-end products, but in order to still, feel like you're kind of treating yourself in the way that you can, we're seeing, those aromatherapy, healthcare, skincare items like that those niches are really doing well.
Any kind of additional kind of sectoral or kind of more specific insights beyond the broad brush?
Not specifically.
Okay. Bill, did you have anything anything that eMarketer have published?
Yeah, I think just to pick up on a comment that you made about different demographics that brands and retailers are now interacting with, and if I can speak anecdotally, I am of an age where my parents are very much not digital natives, and it used to be the case that they would hit the high street, find out what they wanted, and then ask one of their sons to buy it for them online cheaper. That they have now been propelled into this digital world that they've never really felt a part of, and that they are finding affinity with those brands, those retailers that have looked after them. It's been less that the way they approach things has taken a turn. That they're not just going online to find things cheaper now. They realise there is that there are other things at play here. There's convenience, and they're looking at those brands that look after them well. The end-to-end service they're getting from the portal, that their route in to that brand or retailer, how they're looked after along that journey, and then the fulfillment at the end, the delivery. It's this end-to-end thing. And there was a study out by Bazaar Voice. It was a global study, and it found that 42% of digital shoppers that were online shoppers for the first time, and that had come across retailers or brands within that digital environment for the first time and had a good experience, would buy from them again. So that, looking after consumers, particularly from these different demographics, when they're online is really important, and will continue to be important through to the end of the year and onwards.
And it's interesting, actually, you say, obviously they weren't digital natives, but I think, again, speaking from the experience of my parents as well, they become digital natives very quickly. And actually, my parents had never done an online food shop before, which, the vast majority of British people still have, and it still really under indexes, we know, as a category. And obviously retailers, supermarkets couldn't cope with the demand, but my parents absolutely love the idea of somebody. It's almost like going back sort of 60, 70 years, where actually people would deliver stuff to deliver food stuff to your door, and they're kind of really, they now, for them, it's become second nature. So it is really interesting to see how many of these shopping patterns are going to stick, because I think certainly people felt that maybe stuff was a little bit over-egged to begin with, and that actually people do slip back into routine. But who knows, we could be in this situation in 12 months time, in which case that gives plenty of time for new routines to stick. So that's going to be really interesting, I think, to see how brands, obviously, they're going to have to cope with both existing customers, but also new customers as well. I think I read a stat this morning that there's an interesting new set of data out from Retail Week in the UK, which I saw today. And one of the stats in there, which kind of I thought was really sort of astonishing, was that it said that 65% of consumers plan to do the bulk of their shopping online. And coming back to that point, that isn't just a small niche of consumers. That's 65%. That's huge. How much do you think this sort of nervousness around shopping in store is going to play out in terms of it being, obviously, people turning to online? That question, kind of, anybody that wants to take it.
It sounds like the numbers that you were seeing this morning are similar to what I'm seeing. I'm seeing that less than 30% of people feel comfortable shopping in stores right now, which means 70% of people are probably going to do the majority of their shopping online. So it seems to bear out across different surveys that it is the vast majority of people who just don't feel comfortable shopping in stores right now. And there's nothing in terms of the pandemic to indicate that that's going to be better in the next 90 days.
And that does speak to one of the statistics I was talking about earlier. I don't think I mentioned this number, although the growth in retail e-commerce during the holiday season, it's going to be good growth, perhaps not as strong growth as we might have expected. As a proportion of total retail during the holiday season, it's going to be in excess of 30%. 31, 32, I think %, which is just a huge number. And our numbers include grocery and fuel as well. So if you take that out, it's likely to be even higher than that. So yeah, this digital portion is going to be huge.
I think it was an eMarketer stat that I saw a few weeks ago that said that the
Did we lose Kevin, or is it just me?
Hi, can you hear me? Sorry, I think my internet connection dropped out there briefly. Can you hear me okay?
Yes,
Yeah,
you're
we
back.
can hear you now.
Sorry about that. I can blame the office IT. It wasn't my personal Wi-Fi. Yeah, I'm just going to check to see if we've got any questions that have come through. Give me a second. So we have. So somebody saying, picking up on that point, that surely shops won't be able to do Black Friday with social distancing. They'll have to limit the number of shoppers in store at one time, which results in long queues outside stores at checkouts. I mean, I guess that we've kind of touched on some of those points. Also, what we've seen over the past few years is actually people have been avoiding going in store on Black Friday anyway. But I don't know if anyone wants to sort of pick up on anything beyond what we've discussed on that point.
Yeah, again, if I can just talk to the UK again, there was a time a few years ago when BBC News or ITV News would be on Oxford Street filming the melee outside stores, and I think last year they turned up outside. I think, as Thomas mentioned earlier, Curry's came up. They were outside Curry's PC World. They were inside the store, and as the shutters went up, one guy walked into the store. I think in the UK, we were initially enamored with Black Friday. It was very appealing, but the physical side of it has become far less appealing. And given the events of this year, as the question came in, it's going to be even less appealing this year, I think.
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple of other points that I wanted to pick up on, going back to some of the comments that I made at the start in my slides. So I know, Tricia, you mentioned this point earlier, but I'm really intrigued to know what the balance is between people saving and people spending. So obviously we've got the context of the recession, but also we know that, I think I read some crazy stat that said that the number of American savers was more than twice the highest level that it's ever been during lockdown, which is something like 33%, and the previous high was something like 17% in 1975. I guess you're looking at effectively potentially two different groups of people in that, but how much do you think that is going to play out? Have you, again, anecdotal or anything that you've read or seen or data that you've had access to?
It's hard telling, but it does seem, as you mentioned, it's very opposite on both ends of the spectrum, because you do have, we're in a bad economy, but the reality is that we have a lot of people that are actually making a lot more despite the bad economy. So, they are investing more, they are saving more, they are spending more. But for the vast majority of Americans, that's not the case. So I think people are continuing to try to pay off debt. They're continuing to try to save, but no one can help the holiday season. I mean, that's the way it is every year. Every year, most Americans are in debt. Every year, most Americans haven't put away enough money for retirement, and it doesn't stop them from spending during the holiday season. People are looking for everything that they can right now to try to make things feel normal. And, we're not spending money on travel. We're not spending money on restaurants. So those places where you might normally be kind of splurging during the holiday season, you're not doing that. So you do at least have that money that you feel like, well, if we're not taking a vacation this year, we can use that money and spend it on a holiday. Well, if we're not going out to eat, we might as well buy ourselves, a fancy wine club subscription or something like that. So people are able to justify why, even in the middle of this pandemic and in the middle of, the economic crisis, there are still reasons to spend the money.
Bill, I'm not sure if you had anything, or Thomas, if you had anything to kind of add to that.
It was interesting to see in the past few days, there was a news story about house prices in the UK and house sales. I know this is casting the net quite wide, but you know, we're in the same position. We had the furlough scheme in the UK. A lot of people were at home, accruing a lot of money and not having anything to spend it on. But what we've seen, I had a quick look at this before the call. HMRC, Majesty's Revenue and Customs figures show that house sale transactions are, and this is from August, almost at the level that they were last August. So it's likely to be even higher now. And I can again speak anecdotally. In my area where I live, a small seaside town, not too close to Brighton, that it's particularly popular, has suddenly become incredibly popular, with people reacting to this new reality of a lot more home working, not being in, you know, I'm close enough to London that they can afford to move out to this small sleepy seaside town, and so you know, it is this big unknown. What are people spending their money on? Are they going to splurge a lot at Christmas? The evidence is a lot of people are looking to spend money to secure a future by the seaside.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, all of these unknowns obviously make it really difficult to plan as a brand. I read a stat that I think that something like 20% of UK consumers had already started buying stuff for Christmas already, and for, you know, for around peak. What do you think is the danger here of kind of buyer fatigue? Because, you know, if we're effectively saying Prime starts next week, and then there's that sort of like that big lead into Black Friday with brands going ever earlier and earlier, are we at risk of basically getting to sort of mid-December and people are sort of completely bored of shopping? Is that kind of a risk that we face? And obviously from a retailer's perspective, that's kind of makes it a bit of a nightmare in terms of planning.
The thing is, I don't think the risk is higher than it was before, just because people are more bored and they have more time to spend shopping, especially online. So even if there is a risk and it's going to start earlier, I think it's not the time to actually count that risk as something major. So personally, I would start early and would not worry about fatigue as much as before.
I mean, certainly, I think the IMRG have encouraged people to shop early, because then we've got that whole logistics thing, which obviously kicked in April, where you had, it was feast or famine. Some brands couldn't cope, some brands had no demand, some brands had far too much demand. So, you know, that obviously has a knock-on impact on the customer perception of the brand as well. So it'll be interesting to see whether we kind of go back to sort of the bad old days of when Black Friday first became a thing, when those surges actually took websites down. There must be sort of a degree of panic amongst brands around sort of those surges in traffic. So any insights on what you think people will buy? I mean, Tricia, I know you mentioned some of the sort of that kind of lipstick effect, but are there any kind of things that you think, bearing in mind that obviously people might be limited in who they can, the number of people they can see, whether they see friends, family, extended family, all those kind of things, how will that play out, do you think, in terms of what people are likely to buy?
I mean, some things are just going to continue to be the old standbys. You know, people are still going to buy toys for their kids. People are still going to buy the newest tech items, even more so this year, because, you know, the more things that you can do at home, some more gaming, virtual reality, things like that, we're going to continue to see. Exercise equipment, home gym equipment seems to still be something that people are buying. And, you know, the extent to whether you're buying it for gifts, you know, maybe spouses, but you're not going to buy exercise equipment for your neighbor or your best friend probably. So whether the exercise equipment, you know, will continue to be something that we see through the holiday season is unknown. The beauty products will obviously still continue to stay high. It might be some of the little gift giving things that suffer a little bit more. It might be people that are buying more and having things shipped directly, as opposed to buying the types of things that you're handing out, to your friends, to the teachers at schools and things like that, because you just said you're not going to have as many of those white elephant gift parties and things like that that you've had in years past.
Is that what they're called in the US? White elephant gift?
I was actually just wondering what you might call them.
Well, I was thinking about, whether do you have Secret Santa? Is that
Secret Santa too. Mm-hmm.
I'm wondering if Secret Santa's screwed this year because people just won't see their colleagues to give them pointless gifts. Bill, I'm putting you a little bit on the spot here. I know that obviously eMarketer's got like a wealth of data, global data, but somebody specifically asked around Asia and APAC and Singles Day specifically, and what the split is between that. I don't know if you have anything off the top of your head or whether you would direct people through to the website.
Yeah, unfortunately I don't. However, I can do a bit of promotion here. So I'm going to be recording a podcast in 2 weeks, and I am going to be talking with our APAC analyst precisely about this. We're going to be looking at holiday shopping days around the world. So we're going to be digging into Singles Day in APAC. We're going to be looking at Buen Fin in Mexico as well as Black Friday and Cyber Monday. But off the top of my head, I'm afraid I don't have those numbers down.
Well, I mean, hopefully people will be able to tune in and find out a little bit more. Another question here, which again is putting you on the spot, Thomas. I don't know whether this is something that SimilarWeb actually track, but something that we're certainly talking a lot around in the affiliate industry is app tracking, and there's a kind of a big drive to try and, where historically we haven't necessarily tracked that revenue and those sales through the channel, we recognize that it's becoming a more significant part of the channel and how people shop now. I don't know if you have any kind of stats around sort of or data around sort of traffic that is going through apps, and whether this is, I'm assuming it will be a record-breaking year.
Yeah, well, what we've done, we haven't analyzed it very recently, but what we've done, we analyzed it after, I think, 3 or 4 months after the start of COVID, and what we actually seen is desktop usage increasing and app and mobile actually decreasing. So I think this is very natural because you spend more time at home and you don't have to use your phone as much. So this is why, even though you think app usage would generally grow, we've seen the reverse trend. So from our perspective, desktop became even more important than it was before. And when people have a choice at home, use a desktop or mobile phone, in many cases they use actually like laptop or any other device that it's easier to browse and shop with.
Yeah, Bill, I mean, again, I'm putting you on the spot. I think that there is data available on app and app purchases on eMarketer. I'm not sure if there's anything that you can specifically reference there.
You like putting me on the spot.
I'm sorry. Well, look, eMarketer's got like a ton of data on their website, so I know that there is data on app.
I would definitely recommend that people go to the eMarketer website to try and find that data, but it's not something that I can just pull to mind at the moment, I'm afraid.
No worries. Tricia, actually just looking at it from a kind of an industry perspective, are you seeing, we're certainly seeing pressure in the UK, is that also, that's kind of happening in the US as well, around, both the awareness of needing to do that, but also maybe some interesting insights around it?
In terms of tracking of the differences?
Yeah, e-commerce apps.
Yeah, the apps and mobile in general. And we're still seeing some increases in the mobile end. From what I've heard anecdotally, is that it's just because we're multitaskers. And so even though we're not using our phones while we're outside the house as much, people, as they're sitting and binging Netflix, they're still kind of scrolling through Amazon to see what they might want to buy. So you see a different type of shopping when you're on your phone. It's more of that impulse buying, or exactly what you want to buy or where you want to shop, as opposed to if you're looking for deals and discounts, you're going to your desktop because you're wanting to comparison shop across different sites, and that's a lot easier to do on the desktop than what it is to do on the phone.
Okay, just checking, see whether we've got any more questions coming through. No more questions coming through. So I guess if there's kind of one takeaway, one way that you can kind of sum up where we are at the moment beyond sort of just sheer blind confusion and uncertainty? Kind of how do you see the next sort of 2 and a bit months playing out? Tricia, if I can come to you first.
Sure. So from the U.S. publisher standpoint, what I would say is, listening to all of this, it's clear we have no clue what's going to happen. We can look at last year, we can look at what's happened during the pandemic, and so we can make some guesses, but we know that there's still going to be a lot of ups and downs because we don't know what's going to happen with things like stimulus. We don't know if we're going to have another full shutdown across different cities in the United States. So, at least from the U.S. publisher perspective, we have to be nimble. We just have to be prepared. You've got to have some contingency plans in place, whether that's for, your mobile site, for your desktop experience, for the brands that you're promoting, the amount of money that you're going to put into social spending, how you're going to target your loyal audience versus trying to pick up new customers. So it really is just all at this point, it's about being as informed as we can be, but it's also be prepared to be nimble because we don't know what's going to happen, but we know there's a lot of financial opportunity. So be nimble and just prepared to take advantage of the opportunities.
Bill?
I would probably say that really deep discounting mightn't be quite as important as in the past. As I mentioned earlier, if you can build a sincere brand, be perceived as a responsible retailer, a responsible brand, and you can go on a positive sentiment, you stand to gain a lot from a lot of these consumers that are coming online for the first time. And this is a key period where you can really build up that positive sentiment.
Okay, and finally, Thomas, is there anything that you're kind of currently looking into that we can expect to read on SimilarWeb shortly? Is Thomas gone? Thomas, you're on mute.
Sorry, guys.
That's okay.
So yeah, what we're going to be providing now is more reports on how the overall traffic is evolving. So after Prime Day, we're going to look into which websites won, which websites actually performed well during that time, what were the most important products during Prime Day. So that should give guidance to a lot of retailers to see what they should promote maybe through Black Friday and what is more important. We'll also give more perspective with our reports into top keywords in the shopping categories, on-site search and off-site. So for this whole shopping category, what drove the most traffic to the websites? What people are interested on? So as we talked about lipstick, it probably won't be lipstick, but what will it be? And this is something that we're all kind of waiting for, and we're trying to understand better about what will be those trends that we should focus on.
Great. Okay. Well, we're out of time, so thank you all again, both for joining us, and also huge thanks to Bill, Tricia, and Thomas as well, our panel for today. For more Golden Quarter trends and insights, do check out our Awin and ShareASale websites, where you can find digital versions of the 2020 Awin report, which featured some of the trends we discussed today. There's kind of a big overview of 2019's Black Friday and peak season within there, as well as you can find links to our previous Awin report editions and other Q4 analysis as well. You can also uncover more insights from our panelists and their companies by visiting their websites, and those URLs should be on the screen now too. So finally, if you want to reach out to me for any further questions or be put in touch with any of our panelists directly, please do get in touch, and my contact details are on the screen now. But thanks once again for joining us, and hopefully see you soon. Thank you. Bye-bye.